also old news that there was a State of the Union address that Trump was about to make, where he had two speeches in his hand. That one, he was going to withdraw from NATO, and the other, he was going to stay. And allegedly, last minute, he decided that the U.S. Would stay in NATO. Like, in the back of my mind, there is obviously it's not a military complex in the U.S. as in the conspiratorial sense, but there's a very established set of high-profile figures in Pentagon that would wholeheartedly oppose this.
Hello out there and welcome to this week's edition of GeoPortfolio. This is the show where we give you all the geopolitical news and analysis relevant to your portfolio. We've got a lot to talk about this week, so I'm lucky to be joined by my usual partner in here, Anne. Welcome to you, Anne, and good to see you now live from Paris.
Yes, great to be here.
Great, Anne. So we have a couple of topics to talk about. Once again, we're going to talk a little bit about Donald Trump. He's a hard man to avoid this currently. We're going to talk a little bit about the peace process in Gaza. And then finally, we have some news and an article coming up later this week, which is going to be really interesting. But let's get back to that. So let's jump right into it, Anne. The news of this week. Donald Trump, at one of his rallies, of course, that's where he communicates his policies, basically threatened and said that if a NATO country doesn't pay its bills, which obviously refers to the 2% of GDP threshold for military expenditure, he thinks Russia should do whatever they want, and he will encourage Russia to do whatever they want to them. So this caused quite the outrage. How do you view this, Anne? What was your reaction?
Well, I don't think it really constitutes news that Trump believes that if countries don't pay their 2% GDP budget targets for NATO, that he's not in favor of supporting those countries in times of need. But what struck me was the actively encouraging part, which is certainly roaring rhetoric, especially for the two of us Danish citizens, for many of us. If there's any viewers who don't know, we're both Danes and a part of NATO, a small state that certainly relies a lot on backing from the US. Certainly roaring rhetoric. But to his defense, I guess, Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, just came out this morning saying that, announcing that 18 NATO members would reach this 2% threshold this year, in fact. So if that's to Donald Trump's credit, wholeheartedly, probably not, but maybe the timing of this announcement likely has something to do with.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And 2 points here. First and foremost, as you said, we're both Danes. Yesterday, the Danish government announced that that Denmark is going to reach the 2% target this year. That NATO has confirmed this. There's sort of an auditing going on. That includes funding for Ukraine is counted towards the 2%. I'm not sure that Trump would agree with that, but anyway, that's how NATO views it. So there's some legitimacy to that. Another point I have here is that who is Russia going to attack? If you look at all the border states of NATO, the borderline states to Russia, you have Norway, which is currently just shy of the 2%, but should get there this year. You could argue that Denmark is a border state across the Baltic Sea, are going to get to the 2%. Estonia, above 2%. Latvia, above. Lithuania, above. Poland, way above. Even if you count Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, above 2%. So all of the border states, Turkey is a bit hard to discern because of their crazy inflation and currency going on. But Turkey is a bit of a special case. But if you look at all the border states, they're above 2%. And those are the countries that we should expect Russia to attack. It's even a stretch to expect Russia to attack Denmark directly. But even though we're still above the 2%. So what's the case here? Is Russia going to attack Spain or Portugal, even though they're below 2%? All of the countries that Russia might threaten are already above 2%, and more countries are getting there. So I think the outrage has been a little bit too extensive, maybe here in Europe above this. And I think the reaction of starting to invest more and more into military has begun, and that is basically what the US is looking for. Even though this was exceptional rhetoric from Trump. So for now,
I don't know if it's worrying how desensitized at least I am starting to get. Like, it's also old news that there was a State of the Union address that Trump was about to make where he had two speeches in his hand. That one, he was going to withdraw from NATO, and the other, he was going to stay. And allegedly last minute, he decided that the US would stay in NATO. Like, in the back of my mind, there is obviously it's not a military complex in the US as in the conspiratorial sense, but there's a very established set of high-pro figures in Pentagon that would wholeheartedly oppose this. So even if Trump has much power as he has, like, it's gonna take a lot for any drastic means as either withdrawing from NATO or refusing to uphold the treaty.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
but it's good to like expect that probably he won't fall through completely on all of these like threats, but Europe should prepare for the worst always.
Absolutely.
And make sure they can stand on their own 2 feet.
Absolutely. So let's move on a little bit to maybe even worse place on earth right now, the Middle East. I wrote this article a couple of days ago. Why a Gaza ceasefire is coming within 2 weeks. So this is, I went out on a limb. I think we're going to get a peace deal at least within February. Then, of course, this morning, just before recording this, or last night it was, we received the news that Netanyahu has basically pulled out of all ceasefire talks. So that's real good timing when I predicted that that the ceasefire was coming up. Let me maybe just explain my rationale behind this. So Israel is obviously still carrying out the attacks into the Gaza Strip. In recent days, the focus has shifted to Rafah, the largest city still not in Israeli hands. And the thing is that Israel is pushing the Palestinian refugees to the south. They will almost have nowhere else to go but into Egypt or into Europe eventually. So that adds another layer to the discussion. What I think is happening right now is that the US is exerting heavy pressure on Netanyahu to accept a peace deal. And as I see it, he's coming under increasing internal pressure to sign a peace deal. A lot of Israelis are, of course, very focused about the remaining hostages who have been held hostage for several months now. They see this as the most realistic way of getting those hostages out. I don't think anybody in Israel, maybe bar Netanyahu, actually sees it as a realistic scenario to destroy Hamas, whatever that means. So I think a ceasefire is getting closer. The US is putting heavy pressure, as I said, on Israel to get this done, because it's also, in my view at least, the start or the beginning of the end of the Houthi problem, easing of the Iran problem, and the key to restarting talks between Israel and Saudi. So I think the US really wants a ceasefire. And I think the Israelis are under increasing pressure here. But let's see, 2 weeks might be too optimistic, but sometimes you're allowed to be optimistic, right?
And it's becoming increasingly clear that any foreign military aid is completely blocked in the House of Representatives as is now. It is the most amusing story to follow from my perspective. That House Republicans insist that border control be attached to aid package to Ukraine and Israel, and then Trump saying that would be unfortunate in an election here for him to stop the border issue. So they detached border to the foreign aid package, and now they're going back saying they can't pass that anyway. Like, it is the most amusing circus to follow. So really, maybe that also puts a bit of pressure on Netanyahu that it looks dire prospects of getting at least massive funding in this election cycle.
Yes, and when you're into the House, you have a much stronger absolute left wing of the Democratic Party, which is not too fond of funding Israel either. So there are a lot of aspects to this, and the pressure on Israel is really mounting here. Of course, the underlying you talked about incentives earlier. The underlying incentive here for Netanyahu is that once the war is over, he's most likely gone as prime minister. His political career is most likely over. So of course he's still hoping that he can produce some sort of win that it's Netanyahu who frees the hostages rather than some kind of US brokered deal. But I think the pressure is going to become too much within 2 weeks. We'll see if I'm right. Maybe I'm completely wrong. We can all laugh about that. So, and just to finish off this week, I know you're working on an article I'm really looking forward to on labor markets, because much of what we've talked about today has been true geopolitics, war and peace stuff, which is obviously very important for freight rates and oil prices, etc. We all know that, but this is a place where we tap right into the economic narrative. So, and what are you working on regards to labor markets?
Yes, back on our own home turf, which maybe we should stick to in general more. Some would probably argue. But yeah, I've been looking into ongoing wage negotiations, and obviously the story won't come out till tomorrow, so wait for the full feature then. But the headline is, especially in Central and Eastern Europe, the trade unions there have been quite successful in getting real wage increases, which might be worrisome to some, given that those are the very same regions that have been the hardest hit by inflation in Europe, Eastern Europe in particular. So it could indicate that like core inflation in Central and Eastern Europe are kind of latching on for a bit longer, I'd say.
Yeah, could be the first signs of that we're getting into sort of a wage price spiral, as I believe it's called. So very much looking forward to that, and we'll be out on Steno Research tomorrow on Friday. To read my bold prediction of peace within 2 weeks, you also head over to stenoresearch.com. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial, which gives you access both to our political content, as well as all our other macro analysis, our portfolios, both within the macro space and our brand new crypto portfolio, which is doing really well these days, as most things crypto, to be fair. You can get all that free 14-day trial. Head over to stenoresearch.com. If you just want to watch this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And then nothing left for me to do but to thank you, Anne, for joining us, and thank you all out there for tuning in. We'll see you next week.